PI member on board, Dr. Kamlesh Suta, Institute of Kidney Disease and Research Center, IKDRC. For the presentation on the topic, Approach to Liver Allograft Biopsies for Early and Late Allograft Dysfunction, I request Honorable Chairperson to invite the speaker.
I invite Dr. Artna ma'am to present her talk.
The topic for my presentation is approach to liver allograft biopsy for early and late graft dysfunction. So there are important areas where liver biopsy interpretation is important, and most important being rejection.
Ma'am, you can make it to full screen mode.
It's full screen now. It's full screen. Okay. So it's rejection.
I think, madam, your video is not on.
You can see my screen?
Ma'am, we can see your screen, but you can, from the bottom, you can just make it full screen. So like PPT full screen.
It's full screen. It's full screen.
Okay, ma'am, then you can go ahead.
Okay. So rejection, which can be antibody mediated, acute or chronic rejection. And for these entities, it's biopsy is gold standard. Then we have recurrence of original disease. Here again, pathologist has very important role. There can be de novo conditions where preservation reperfusion injury, which is more often seen with DDLT situations. That's an important. It can be in isolation or as in combination with rejection. So one has to keep that in mind. Then for confirmation of diagnosis, sometimes help of pathologist is required. That is for technical and surgical complications. Then any drugs, mainly immunosuppressive, and other antibiotics in between. So any complications or any dysfunction due to that. And then de novo diseases, more important are de novo autoimmune and de novo fatty liver. And then recurrent or de novo neoplasms. So the important ones I have highlighted in this slide. And with this background, so for these entities, what we need to know is what is the time course following transplantation. So duration after transplantation is very important. What was the course? Were there multiple episodes of rejection or sepsis? What were the TAC levels? And with this information, we have to look at histological patterns, and we have to make based on the pathology certain differential diagnosis. And again, we have to look back at the clinical information or any particular further information which is required to reach a particular single diagnosis. And in transplant scenario, most often it is even more than 2 or multiple or complex pictures because of immunosuppression going on. So for this topic, that is early dysfunction and late graft dysfunction. So what is early? Whatever is happening in first 3 months. Most important period is first few days to 1 month. So that's early graft dysfunction. For late graft dysfunction, some people call it more than 3 months. Some use a definition of 6 months and some 12 months. So usually it's 3 to 6 months where different type of conditions, they are cause of dysfunction. So that's why this segregation is there. So why biopsy is indicated in early graft dysfunction? So after transplant, there was failure to normalization of LFTs, or it worsened rather, or when there is rise in liver enzymes after initial fall. In both these situations, one has to see technical complications. So that surgical, those information is very important. And most important is rejection, AMR, ACR. So these are to be kept in mind. Or is it due to donor factors, or is it due to PRI? Apart from that, some diseases like viral infections can recur very early post-transplant. So these are the things in early graft dysfunction which we have to keep in mind. For late graft dysfunction, it's something new. So things have been normal. LFT had come down to normal, but now new onset abnormality is there. So now in this period, that is 3 months, 6 months post-transplant, recurrence of disease becomes more important, but simultaneously all types of rejection, that is cellular, acute cellular, as well as chronic rejection, they come into play. So these are important entities. Apart from that, de novo post-transplant neoplasms, newly acquired liver disease, be it DILI, be it de novo fatty liver. So all these conditions are to be considered. Apart from these indications, if for some particular clinical diagnosis, treatment has been given in less than expected normalization, or as a follow-up to prior biopsy or abnormalities on post-transplant imaging, again, biopsy would be done. So with this background, so in first month, more often rejection, preservation, reperfusion, injury, ischemia, they are the main diagnosis. In 1 to 12 months, we have to consider rejection, biliary complications, opportunistic recurrence. So, and in more than 12 months, it's recurrence, de novo, biliary complication, rejection, and idiopathic chronic. Now with this, so it gives at least idea. So if it is a first month post-transplant, which all conditions are more often seen and we have to consider them or to exclude them. With this background, now we have to look at biopsy. So whether it's there's some combination of findings in each of these entities. So is it a portal mixed inflammation? Is it associated with zone 3 changes? So I will be coming to all these details in my subsequent slides. Is it a mononuclear inflammation? Or is it just centrilobular cholestasis? Or it's mainly concentrated on bile ducts which are damaged? Or it's just steatosis, or it's just perivenulitis. So all have very different group of conditions which we have to consider. And when we make our list based on whether it's perivenulitis, so we are considering 4 or 5 things, then we have to correlate this with the clinical information that I mentioned, that is time from transplantation, the course of serological parameters, clinical course, medication, imaging results. These all become very important to further shortlist to exclude entities and come up to one single diagnosis or maximum 2-3 diagnoses or a combination. That means combination. So important entities are acute rejection, where a pathologist has role, acute rejection, late acute rejection, chronic rejection, disease recurrence, isolated perivenulitis, de novo conditions, and malignancies. I have approached this transplant biopsy, this presentation, taking rejection as the main condition. We have to exclude rejection and what all comes in differential diagnosis. So acute rejection, usually first month, so first few weeks, what we see is there is, if we are getting portal changes which are mixed, a lot of eosinophils are there, plasma.
Ma'am, your slides are not moving. Ma'am, slides are, they are
Can
stuck.
you see my slide now?
Ma'am, only first slide we can see. It is.
So some, okay, that
now we can see. Now we can.
Okay, now you can see. So I will not repeat anything. I will just show you the slides. So this I have covered. This was early graft dysfunction. This is late graft dysfunction, and this all I have covered. This was the time conditions to be considered, the histological patterns, the clinical information, the main conditions where pathologist has role, and now coming to ACR and differential diagnosis. Now you can see.
Yes.
So this is mixed inflammation. This is a portal vein showing portal vein endothelitis. Bile duct is damaged. So this is a very classical picture of acute rejection. With this picture, we will give a diagnosis of acute rejection. But with this, if we are getting prominent cholestasis or apoptosis or lobular inflammation, steatosis, there is something else along with rejection, and then we have to tell about the dominant cause. So if acute rejection is moderate to severe, that is an indication for treatment. So we have to look at that. What these conditions mean, so apoptosis or lobular inflammation, if it is there, it is prominent. That means with rejection, there is some atypical viral or viral infection, it's occurring. If we are getting prominent cholestasis, we have to think about other conditions, maybe drug related. If we are getting steatosis, is it PRI? And these entities are based on clinical or pathological pictures. So what would be the differential diagnosis? As I mentioned, PRI, preservation, reperfusion injury, biliary obstruction, antibody-mediated rejection, sepsis, and HAT, hepatic artery thrombosis. These all will be important. As for preservation, reperfusion injury, more prominent changes would be in first 2-3 weeks. After 3 weeks, it subsides. Usually within 15 days, it starts disappearing. So there will be centrizonal changes of steatosis, ballooning, and there would be neutrophilic pericholingiolitis in portal tract. So these are the histological changes with lot of neutrophils, bile we will get. How to differentiate from rejection? If we are getting the classical picture of bile duct lymphocytic infiltrate, endothelitis, or zone 3 perivenulitis, it's more in favor of acute rejection. However, if we are getting cholestasis in zone 3, that is centrilobular area, it's more in favor of PRI. And if it's a 4-week biopsy, we will not consider PRI. So as compared to initial dysfunction, there would be normalization if it is just PRI. Vascular problems, so vascular anastomotic problems, HAT can be there, and it is associated with very non-specific, which can be part of other things also, like coagulative necrosis would be there, hemorrhagic necrosis would be there, sinusoidal dilatation, congestion. So in contrast to rejection, it is not going to show much of inflammation. It will lack endothelitis. And in rejection, we usually don't see infarction or large areas of congestion. So that is the way we will exclude ischemic cause or HAT-related picture. Sepsis, that's another one. Although picture doesn't match, but initial graft dysfunction can be because of this. Now in this, we will be getting cholestasis, lot of ductular proliferation with cholangitis lenta-like picture with ductular plugs. These are all not feature of acute cellular rejection. And we will not be getting classical acute rejection features in sepsis. Biliary complications, again, bile duct stricture. So here again, some clinical details are very important. If there's some such history, it can be rejection with features of biliary complication, and it can be anastomotic, which occurs in the differential of acute or early dysfunction. Non-anastomotic causes or ischemic biliary complications would be in differential of late occurrence. So to differentiate from acute rejection, this is mixed infiltration. Again, the classical features of acute rejection would not be there in biliary obstruction, but if we are getting a lot of ductular reaction, cholestasis, bile plugs, neutrophilic pericholangitis, as is shown here, so this would be in favor of biliary obstruction. Obviously here history is very important. The other thing, in first few hours to weeks, hyperacute in first few hours and then acute rejection in first few weeks. So it's very important again. Although it's rare in liver, but awareness is important. So hemorrhagic necrosis, areas of coagulative necrosis, zone 3 changes, lot of fibrin, hemorrhage, all these, but correlation with DSA and C4D is very important because these features become non-specific in the sense lot of conditions can have this type of picture. Acute AMR, when we are considering their classical criteria, so all this should be fulfilled. So that is so portal tracts will have edema. Now here obstruction is important because portal edema and neutrophils is seen in obstruction also. So that history needs to be there. If it is excluded, if we are getting neutrophils and edema is there, but a lot of vascular channels like in kidney. So those microvascular channels and PTC-like changes like monocytic, eosinophilic and neutrophilic portal microvasculitis, if it is there, it is in favor of acute AMR. We need to have DSA and C4D. And exclusion of, as I mentioned, obstructive or other pathologies needs to be there to call it acute AMR. So it's showing necrosis with inflammation in the portal tract. Sorry. And this is also showing sinusoidal congestion with fibrin and necrosis. And this is hyperacute type of rejection. C4D, these are portal vascular channels which are showing staining. There is sinusoidal areas which are showing the staining. And as well as portal stromal. C4D positivity is seen here. The second group comes, it's again acute rejection, but it is late acute rejection because of the time and the features which differ. So after 3 months, and I have clubbed this with chronic rejection because differential diagnosis, they have common differential diagnosis here. So I will explain this. So instead of now mixed inflammation, when portal tracts have mononuclear inflammation, more of lymphocytes, plasma cells, and biliary changes are more prominent. So what we see here is there are nuclear loss is there, uneven spacing is there, size is different. This occurs more than 3 months post-transplant, and late acute rejection usually presents with transaminitis, whereas chronic rejection will have more of cholestatic picture. This is important because they are less responsive to immunosuppression and based on changes may progress to chronic rejection. Now, because the infiltrate is now not mixed, so different conditions come into differential diagnosis. All those conditions which have portal-based inflammation, that is mononuclear, they will now be in differential diagnosis, like recurrent viral hepatitis, autoimmune hepatitis. If biliary changes are prominent, PSC, PBC, PTLDs, biliary complications. So all these are now important as so it is showing all. So atrophic duct is there, mononuclear inflammation is there. One important feature is along with the portal changes, we get lot of zone 3 changes, which can be perivenulitis or inflammation around central vein. There would be sinusoidal dilatation, congestion. So it can be in late acute rejection, you're not getting much of portal changes. It's more of zone 3 changes. So that is also there. Or you will get lot of lobular inflammation, interface hepatitis. So picture is very different. It's more like viral or autoimmune hepatitis. But again, Steatosis should not be there. It's indicating there is something else, maybe coexisting recurrence, or it's DILI, or so maybe just so because patient is taking prednisolone steroids. Are there random spotty necrosis? Should not be there. Again, it indicates some viral infection. This infiltrate is not B cell type. Chronic rejection, when these changes are less, that is inflammation is less, more of bile duct changes will have, so we don't see any duct here. So ductopenic and hepatic arteriopathy. This is very less frequent to see in biopsy because of this is more towards hilum or larger vessels, we can see this. So in biopsy, what we are seeing, duct changes, and because of these duct changes, all biliary complications, even opportunistic infections with long-standing CMV and all, we can get this type of changes. And ischemic cholangiopathy due to any reason. So all these come into differential diagnosis. So again, we don't see any duct, and important indicators are there would be foam cells in parenchyma, then zone 3 may show bile, there will be, but there are fortunately few areas where still features of classical AR or LAR might be there to help you in the diagnosis. These are differentiated from the conditions I mentioned because they usually lack, CR usually lacks ductular proliferation or significant portal periportal fibrosis. So how to differentiate classical AR from late acute from chronic? So if inflammation is mixed, it's more with AR, it's mononuclear in the other two. Then bile duct and portal vein damage is most severe in early AR, whereas interface activity and lobular inflammation is more often a part of late CR. Bile duct damage and absence, it's more of CR. So with this and lobular changes inflammation, that is more in favor of late acute rejection. Even CR is further divided into early and late CR because so it's well established CR will have absence of bile duct in more than 50% of tracts, and interlobular arteries would be missing in more than 25% of tracts. Along with that, there would be moderate to marked perivenular fibrosis. So these are the features of late CR. Otherwise, it's called early CR. And if we are getting some changes of inflammatory or LAR, so we can just write LARs/early CR. Disease recurrence, it's important differential diagnosis in late period, more often in more than 12 months for most of the conditions except for viral, which can occur very early. So if it is inflammatory thing in rejection, HCV recurrence is important differential. If it's biliary, then PBC, PSC are important differentials. So this is just showing the frequencies. So most of the conditions have 20 to 50% prevalence, except for viral, which has HCV has very high prevalence. This is showing the recurrence can be atypical presentation, which is very aggressive, and it doesn't match with the normal native liver viral hepatitis-like picture. It has 4 features which are important. There would be marked ballooning of hepatocytes, there would be cholestasis, there would be ductular reaction, perisinusoidal fibrosis, but it lacks inflammation. So that's important. It's very aggressive. So early and awareness about this and prompt diagnosis is very important. Acute rejection, more important differential, that is hepatitis C recurrence. They can occur together also. So that needs to be seen. And if they occur together, dominant cause needs to be mentioned. So classical features of acute rejection, if seen, it's very helpful. Otherwise, if we are getting steatosis, so it's not part of rejection, it's in favor of hepatitis. And for this, we have to correlate with the TAC levels, previous TAC levels, as well as HCV RNA levels to reach the right diagnosis. For chronic rejection versus any biliary pathology like PSC, again, if we are getting very striking portal changes in the form of portal edema, cholestasis, ductular reaction, copper deposits, it's in favor of PSC and it's not rejection. Whereas if there are changes in zone 3, central perivenulitis, or even bile in that area, it's more in favor of chronic rejection. There are de novo conditions. More important are de novo autoimmune and de novo non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. They are important, and these I have already told. So with serology, we have to look for, I have included a case also, so I will show there. Then hepatic structural abnormalities in long, so like a year after or 2 years after post-transplant, nodular regenerative hypoplasia. Now this can be due to some vascular issues, or it can be drug related, so that is to be considered. Chronic active AMR in late graft cause of late graft dysfunction. It has very non-specific features on biopsy, that is mild mononuclear portal or perivenular inflammation combined with at least moderate fibrosis in zone 1 or zone 3, but this should definitely be there, that is DSA and C4D positivity. So these are absolutely needed to call it chronic active AMR. There's another entity, if you get more than 6 months post-transplant and you are getting autoimmune liver disease like autoimmune hepatitis like picture, then plasma cell rich rejection is a condition. This is a recent term. So autoimmunity mixed with acute cellular and chronic rejection. It's a plasma cell rich rejection which is seen more than 6 months post-transplant. If in any degree of infiltrate, zone 1 or zone 3, more than 30% of cells are plasma cell, it is called PCRR. It's all so everything comes as part of rejection. Central perivenulitis in late biopsies, you might not get any changes in portal tracts. It's just isolated zone 3 changes, and most important is late acute rejection. But other things we have to consider. It may be drug related, it can be early presentation of autoimmune hepatitis, or it can be HCV on therapy. So these all are to be considered. Central lobular hemorrhagic necrosis I have covered initially in HAT. So it's non-specific finding, but with these finding we need to have lot of, except for AMR or CR. So we have to have history and all surgical and other complication related details to reach a specific diagnosis. With these vascular changes are very common with tacrolimus, azathioprine, even sirolimus, or when we are getting isolated cholestasis. It can be immunosuppressant related, or the patient is taking some antibiotics. Steroid related steatosis is another drug toxicity important feature. Just in 1 minute 4 cases are there, very short cases. So first is 29-year male, LDLT done for acute and chronic liver failure for alcohol related liver disease. He was put on triple immunosuppression, but he was irregular on follow-up and was not taking his medications regularly, and he started consumption of alcohol. So recidivism was there. His biopsy showed duct damage, portal changes, portal endothelitis, zone 3 changes, again uplifting, detachment of endothelium with endothelitis we can see. So it was late acute rejection, pulse steroid started, sirolimus added to triple immunosuppression. But because of he was not taking medications and he was not on proper follow-up, ducts are now showing so much atypia. Inflammation is less, it's mononuclear, so much atypia, foam cells, and now zone 3 is showing cholestasis. Now this has turned into chronic rejection. So this is how acute rejection can progress to chronic rejection. This is a case of recurrence of autoimmune liver disease in a 50-year-old female, cirrhosis, PBC related. Often it is seen when it recurs in post-transplant period, PBC becomes overlap. It has now overlap type of feature. So 6 months post-transplant, there were no episodes of rejection before or after this index biopsy. TAC levels throughout the course were maintained. And this patient had granulomas that centric to bile duct, as well as zone 3 changes of plasma cells. So it had mixed autoimmune PBC picture. You can see sheets of plasma cells, interface activity, lobular plasma cells. So this is recurrence of PBC. Then is de novo autoimmune, 40-year male patient. ACLF, cirrhosis, NASH related, 3.5 years post-transplant. Now, this patient didn't have any episodes of rejection. TAC levels were always maintained, but there's severe inflammation in the tracts with lots of plasma cells. And you can see even in central lobular area, there are so many plasma cells here. So, and rosetting is there. So this was de novo autoimmune hepatitis with IgG levels high. Then is plasma cell rich rejection. This is in a 64-year male patient, LDLT for cryptogenic cirrhosis. Initial 3 months, he had sepsis. 7 months later, with this graft biopsy, we can see the duct is severely damaged. There is a lot of inflammation, and it has a lot of plasma cells, even in the central lobular or zone 3 areas. And these plasma cells were intensely positive for IgG4, fulfilling all the criteria, most of the criteria for plasma cell rich rejection. So when we are looking at a biopsy in a post-transplant period, after initial assessment, we have to see the context of clinical course. Then first thing, most important thing is to exclude, depending on the time period which we are talking about, the type of rejection or any rejection evidence. After that, we have to look whether there are any histological patterns or any dominant morphology based on which we can make our differential diagnosis. And based on that differential diagnosis, we need to again look back at the clinical details, or if any other further clinical information is required, we have to see that. And do we need to have C4D or say CMV or any other IHC is required? Final diagnosis, are we able to reach single diagnosis, or if it is multiple diagnosis from our side, what is the dominant cause? So that we need to tell. So liver biopsy based approach, it's important when we are seeing such spectrum of diseases which is so broad in post-transplant period, where rejection, de novo conditions, and confirmation of clinically suspected causes. This is the most important area where pathologist has role, and all that clinical information helps us to reach the diagnosis. Thank you.
So very nice, Dr. Archana. Can I ask you a question? This is Vinita.
Yeah, Dr. Vinita, hello.
Hello, nice to. This was a very lucid and very nice presentation. Just a query. We talk about protocol biopsies in liver in renal transplants. So, what is the status of protocol biopsies for liver transplant patients?
Okay, so protocol biopsies, they have become very, they were important for HCV-like conditions where, so viral is one, where protocol biopsies are important, be it 3 months, then after 1 year. Then time zero biopsy is important when we need to know what were the donor lesions. So we can assess the biopsy, post-transplant allograft biopsies at the time of dysfunction in that context. Third area, the more recent area is more tried in pediatric patients. So they can't be put on immunosuppression for lifelong. So for weaning that immunosuppression, protocol biopsies are being seen. If there is no amount of fibrosis, no inflammation, even in patients because of drugs who are developing renal impairment, even there they want to wean off this immunosuppression. So that is the third area where a lot of work is going on. So where protocol biopsies are done, whether we can stop immunosuppression or not.
For that, madam, how much protocol biopsy duration?
For weaning, this thing?
For weaning, yes.
For weaning, it's after many years, 5-6, minimum 5-6 years for a child also.
Okay.
But in case of renal impairment or complications, then it's done. It's tried early also.
That is good. I have one question. With our experience of our liver transplant in our center, initially 1 or 2 months, we usually see the cholestasis only. No other inflammatory reactions or any infiltrates or any ductopenia or duct injury, whatever. But prominent feature was only the cholestasis. Can you focus on that?
So there are tacrolimus, sirolimus, azathioprine. So earlier it was thought of that they cause just vascular complications, drug toxicity. There are now recent reports also, even we have seen, there can be isolated. So maybe initial adjusting of that dose. So at that time, maybe these immunosuppressants are because patient is not taking any other medicine. And if this cholestasis is related to, say, preservation reperfusion injury, it should go by 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So most often it's related to immunosuppressants. Tacrolimus, sirolimus, all these are.
Yeah. But in our setup, our surgeons and they are using only monotherapy with tacrolimus.
Tacrolimus, but tacrolimus causes cholestasis.
Okay, so they should decrease the medicines.
That is one. So that is one cause, early obstructive. So whether they are, so that surgical complication, that history is required. Apart from that, so cholestasis is associated basically with PRI, with drugs, and obstructive or surgical cause. These are the most important causes.
And it is also correlating with the stuck-up liver enzymes. That is why they are so much worried.
So as long as rejection is not there, these things usually subside. Most of these things will, surgical cause, they will correct. We have role in rejection. If there's no rejection, then they should look at their dose of immunosuppressant.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's no other condition.
If dose is sufficient, then can we suggest to wait and watch? Because
Sorry?
due to the If tacrolimus is not culprit, I think so.
They can change the drug. Usually they can shift to sirolimus that way.
Okay.
I would like
So
to
we can-
ask a
we
question.
can suggest. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Archana,
Hello, Dr. Sonia. Hi.
hi. I'm sorry I was not able to join. I was listening to that question of protocol biopsies. At our center, they are doing protocol biopsies in pediatric cases.
Okay.
Every 6 months to 1 year, the protocol biopsies are coming to us. And I guess that is largely for weaning of immunosuppression in the long run. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, and the second thing, one question actually, I wanted to ask was that post-COVID, have you seen any resurgence in rejection cases in the transplants which were behaving well in last few years? Because this is what we have observed in last 6 months to 1 year.
No transplants were going on in that period, but those patients or those transplants which happened after that, it's same. We didn't find any difference.
Because
Same
in
number
our
of
cases, we did have the ones which were very, very stable over, in fact, 2 years. Suddenly came back with liver dysfunction, and the biopsies did reveal acute rejection. And of course, with the background of chronicity. So I just wanted to know what your experience
It's
in
an
taking
interesting
these
point, but
are.
frequency, I feel it's the same frequency, but I will still check. It's
Okay.
Ma'am,
interesting. I will see.
can I add? Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I add my experience from Hyderabad? We had one case of a doctor who who had undergone liver transplant for autoimmune liver disease. She had taken a vaccination, ma'am. Post-vaccination,
Yes,
there was
similar,
there was again.
actually, right. Same thing. 2 cases were post-vaccine.
Yes, ma'am. So I think the vaccine also
Yes.
is.
Yeah, this
starting
happened, and their pre-transplant diagnosis was autoimmune hepatitis, for which
Yes.
they were transplanted, and they were stable, and they came back with dysfunction after.
For dysfunction, there is another important reason. In COVID period, patients
Yes.
are not giving history. They are taking a lot of immune boosters, especially herbs. I will not take name of those drugs
Yeah.
or those plants. And that is causing dysfunction, and that is causing autoimmune-like picture.
Yeah, it
So
might be
herbal
that.
things,
Yes.
which are immune boosters, lot of these are being taken by post-transplant
Yes.
or in general population. Those taking vaccine, everybody is taking those herbal things, which are causing autoimmune-like picture in biopsies.
And
Even in native.
secondly, the other thing which we noticed were lack of compliance to the immunosuppressants.
Ma'am, yeah, the reason for that in our patient, she had fever post-vaccination. She stopped the immunosuppression.
Yeah.
And then she had. I think that is another reason why post-vaccination many people get fever, and they stop taking, and then again they have a recurrence.
Okay. And I think any more questions? I think I must compliment Dr. Archana for her beautiful rendition of such a vast topic. In fact, it is very difficult to cover this entire topic in 20 minutes. And she did an excellent job as far as the spectrum is concerned. And we have, I'm sure the entire audience will move out enriched. Thank you, Dr. Archana.
Thank you.
Okay. And I think we hand over the session to the organizers for the next session. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Rastogi. Thank you, chairpersons, for chairing the session.